Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to Learning Tree International's monthly webinar series. We're excited to present to you ITIL 4 Foundation What's Next, an overview of managing professional and ITIL strategic leader certifications. And before I turn it over to our speaker today, just a couple of housekeeping items. You are in Learning Tree's remote anywhere environment, so your mics have been muted. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put those in the chat pod. We will address your questions at the end in a Q&A following the presentation. In addition, in some follow-up emails, you will receive the recording of this webinar, as well as some other resources for you to continue to look into what's beyond ITIL 4 Foundation. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to Sandy Kelly. Sandy is our ITIL author as well as instructor. She's authored many of the modules of ITIL 3 and ITIL 4. She has authored ITIL 4 Foundations, Digital and IT Strategy, otherwise known as DITS, Create, Deliver, and Support, and Direct, Plan, and Improve. So just from those credentials alone, I think you know that you've got an expert talking to this morning. So with that, Sandy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jackie, and welcome to everyone, no matter what time zone you are in. As Jackie mentioned, I am the author / co-author of the majority of these modules, along with my partner in crime over in the UK, Hitesh Patel. In addition to that, I also have a V2 Service Manager certification, the V3 Expert, and then all of the ITIL 4 certificates. So I know a lot about each one of these modules, and my goal today is to basically orient you to what each module will be discussing to help you decide what is your next step on your ITIL journey. I did kind of keep half an eye on those polls as you were coming in there, and it looks like we're about 50-50 on some of you have completed ITIL 4 Foundations and some of you have not. So I will just give you a very short blurb on one of the main aspects called the service value chain, which these modules will be taking a look at as we go along. So we're going to take a quick look at the ITIL 4 qualification scheme. We'll discuss each of the managing professional modules as well as the strategic leader module. Now, my goal here today is not to teach you what is in each one of these, but rather give you an idea of what's going to be discussed so that you can make some decisions. This is the scheme for the ITIL 4 qualification and how you get to the different certificates. Every one of the certificates requires an ITIL 4 Foundation passed exam. You can certainly participate in any course without having passed the exam. However, you will be a bit lost on a few of the concepts that are in there. There is the ITIL Managing Professional Certificate, which is made up of 4 courses: Create, Deliver, and Support, Drive Stakeholder Value, High Velocity IT, and Direct, Plan, and Improve. You can see off to the side there's something that says ITIL V3 Expert Transition. And that is a course that is designed for those who have done a number of V3 modules. And I see that there was a number of you that have done that, and I will talk about that briefly at the end. On the other side of that chart is the ITIL Strategic Leader title. And that is made up of 2 modules: the Direct, Plan, and Improve, which is the same one as in Managing Professional. You do not have to do it twice, have no fears there. And then a Digital and IT Strategy module. The numbers that are on that page are the Learning Tree International course numbers. So 1281, 1282, 1283, etc. This is the Axelos / PeopleCert format. It is their qualification scheme. They publish a syllabus, and Learning Tree meets all of the requirements for each of those certificates. So at the end, you are able to sit for the exam. So let's start off with Managing Professional. Managing Professional, every one of those courses is 3 days, instructor-led, basically classroom style. And when I say classroom style, what I mean by that is it can be done virtually. And in fact, for the last year and a half, we've been doing all virtual courses. Once the world is more open, because we are at the end of the pandemic, because this is a recorded webinar, you will have the option of either being in the classroom or doing it virtually, but it will be 3 days. The ITIL 4 digital book is included for the individual modules. When I talked briefly about the Managing Professional transition module, that all 4 books are not provided in that case. But for the 3-day courses, the ITIL Digital 4 book is included. You have the option of taking the exam on the afternoon of the 3rd day, and you can either do it in class if you're physically in a classroom, or you can get a voucher. And if you are doing an online version, or a virtual version rather, you would get the voucher, and then you have the option of when it is you want to take it. For the Managing Professional modules, the exam is 1 hour, it's 40 questions, it's multiple choice, and it's Bloom's Level 2 and 3. For those that are not familiar with Bloom's Level, it's basically a series of difficulty of the type of questions. Bloom's Level 1 is remember or describe. Bloom's Level 2 is understand, which is basically predict and discuss. And then Bloom's Level 3 is apply, meaning use or solve. The Strategic Leader module also uses analyze, which is identify and compare. For those of you that did the intermediate classes in ITIL version 3, there are no more gradient answers. And I know I can hear those of you that did those modules cheering at this point in time. So it's a very straightforward ABCD, one right answer type of a question. In order to sit for the exam, you do need to have passed the ITIL 4 foundation. Version 3 foundation is not accepted for the ITIL 4 scheme. So there's 4 separate modules. As I said earlier, the Direct Plan and Improve module is common with Strategic Leader. 4 modules, there is no required order. I think that's one of my most asked questions is there an order? For this one, it absolutely doesn't matter which one you take when. The only thing that's important is that you do an ITIL 4 foundation so that you have an understanding of the diagram that's on the page right now. So the first module is Create, Deliver, and Support, usually referred to as CDS. What's the picture that's on there is the service value chain, which you learn about in somewhat depth in foundation. These are the basic building blocks for how you go about creating and maintaining your services. So we no longer have the idea of a life cycle, rather I look at it as blocks. We have plan, maybe you do some engage, which is where you discuss things or gather information from the business or from other aspects of the service provider. Design, where you lay out the blueprint. Obtain and build, where you either build your solution, your software, put together your hardware, or you buy it. So you can also obtain. And then transition, where you do your testing and getting your solutions into the live environment. And then deliver and support, where you actually have the service ongoing to all of your users and your customers. And then improve, the whole idea of you are always constantly improving. So that's kind of my 30-second blurb there on the service value chain. So each of the courses will have certain value chain activities that they focus in on. And Create, Deliver, and Support focuses in on the center block of design and transition, obtain and build, and deliver and support. The key concepts that are discussed in Create, Deliver, and Support is basically that of service value streams. And what is basically going to happen in here is you'll develop the idea of what is a value stream, and then dive into how do you create them. There's actually two different value streams, or two examples of value streams on this particular page. The one that has the numbers 1 through 6 on it is a value stream that illustrates how you can go about creating a new service. And what you actually discuss in this class would be things like, what are the inputs, the outputs, desired outcomes, things like lead times, and what practices are going to participate most in each of those value chain activities for that value stream. For those of you that have not done the ITIL 4 Foundation, practices is basically processes with the tools, the people, the data, information, knowledge, and everything else that you need in order to carry out a process. Because a process really is only steps to achieve an objective. But a process does not describe what's the data, who's going to do the work, what are all of the possible inputs and outputs. So a practice is basically the process expanded with everything you could possibly need. So 1 through 6 is the example of how to create a new service. Once that service is created, you need to maintain it. So the one below that has the numbers 1 through 7 is an example of a value stream for resolving an incident or supporting a live service. So in this course, you will walk through that one also in the detail of what would the inputs, the outputs, the participants, even the skill sets that would be involved in these types of value streams. You see a diagram on the left-hand side of the 4 dimensions. You also talk about how the 4 dimensions of organizations and people, information technology, partners and suppliers, value streams and processes, and how they come into play in create, deliver, and support. There is a couple of other items that are discussed in here. Shift left in terms of your value streams, and shift left has to do with moving work closer to the source, because part of the things that we want to do in creating our value streams is to optimize our workflows. So this will also include discussions on metrics and things like cycle time and lead time. In the Managing Professional module, there is a brief discussion on individual practices that support the course. So what supports create, deliver, and support. I want to emphasize it's a brief discussion. What is in the syllabus is discussion of the purpose, a little bit on some of the activities, and then what type of metrics or practice success factors do you want to look at to make sure that you're doing a good job of these practices in support of create, deliver, and support. So the highlighted ones, highlighted in gray, are the practices that are touched upon in create, deliver, and support. If you take a look at the slide as a whole, you'll see some are bold, and you will recall that the ones in bold are the ones that are discussed in ITIL 4 Foundation. One of your poll questions had to do with, do you have an Axelos My ITIL subscription that is active? And that is where you find the details on each of these practices. So that pretty much wraps up create, deliver, and support. The next module in the Managing Professional stream is direct, plan, and improve, or DPI. So like the last overview, here are the service value chain activities that are emphasized in that course. And it's plan and improve. It kind of matches up with the title. The other service value chain activities are touched upon briefly, but the main focus is on plan and improve. This particular course is built around, or it discusses in detail, the continual improvement approach. For those of you that did version 3, if you take a look at the continual improvement approach in ITIL 4, you'll see that there's an additional step. And this version of the continual improvement approach matches up with COBIT, which is quite handy. So you discuss in detail that model of what is the vision, where are we now, where do we want to be, how do we get there, take action and did we get there, and then how to keep the momentum going. When you look across the continual improvement approach, you can start to see some of the things relative to direct. And this is where we discuss things like your span of control, what is your influence, what are policies and guidelines that you need in order to go through this entire model. We discuss some of the principles and methods of continual improvement across different types of environments, things like Six Sigma, SWOT, Agile, and I already mentioned COBIT. Metrics are always important when you are looking at directing, planning, and improving. So we have on there the 4-quadrant way of measuring customers versus financial, business processes, and learning and growth. So we're going to get into some of those metric discussions. Things like processes, technology, service, why we measure, direct, justify, intervene, and validate, and then types of metrics like inside out, outside in, leading, and lagging indicators. So there's quite an in-depth discussion on some of those metric options. You've got your SMART KPI picture on there to help you remember how you should be developing some of those. Then the other topic that is discussed in quite a bit of detail in DPI is that of organizational change management relative to communications. Things like communications is a two-way process, the fact that we're communicating all the time, and there's no single method of communicating. The practices that are discussed in this particular module is continual improvement, kind of as you would expect, and then organizational change management. So we go into quite a bit of depth on both of those topics. So that is DPI. Our next module in the Managing Professional scheme is High Velocity IT, or HVIT. And High Velocity IT is looking at all of the value stream, but looking at it from the perspective of how does the value stream support the idea of high velocity, basically faster IT. And there's quite a bit of discussion in here on the traditional approaches, which is more of the waterfall, the longer planning horizon type of IT, versus the more, I'll use the word agile approach, or the much faster. The things that we're going to discuss in this course is some of the concepts related to high velocity IT, and I'll mention a couple of those in a minute. How the digital product lifecycle needs to change in terms of working inside of the ITIL operating model. And your service value chain is your ITIL operating model. There is a brief discussion on the guiding principles and how they support high velocity IT. Okay, guiding principles for those that did not do the ITIL 4 foundation yet. There are 7 of them, and they're basically 7 universal enduring principles that help you to deliver and maintain good quality products and services. And they're things that you always need to be thinking about in terms of creating and supporting your services. The other objective in high velocity IT is to look at how do we achieve value with our digital products. We have a rather comprehensive chart in here that pretty much summarizes what is going on in HVIT. Down the one side, accept ambiguity and uncertainty, trust and be trusted, continually raise the bar, help customers get the job done, and commit to continual learning. That side of this diagram is the culture of HVIT. So each one of those are discussed in terms of what do they mean and what do you need to be thinking about. Things like continually raise the bar is never being satisfied with the status quo. Continual learning, basically saying we always want to continually learn because ignorance is the root of many problems. Then across the top of this is the objectives of HVIT. The objectives are valuable investments, fast development, resilient operations, co-creating value, and assured conformance. And let me just take a quick moment on co-create value. ITIL 3 was looking at creating value for customers. And what's changed over the last several years in the ITIL concepts is recognizing that we need to co-create value with our customers and our users. So you're going to see the phrase co-create value appears a lot. And then assured conformance is making sure that even though we're doing high velocity, we still are following all of our policies and our governance aspects at the appropriate degree. Then in the center of this is a number of techniques and methods to help us meet both the culture and the objectives. So looking at things like ethics, the idea of a safety culture. Okay, safety culture basically being safe to fail, that it's okay to make a mistake. A lean culture, taking a look at the Toyota Kata. And then lean, agile, resilient, continuous concepts and methods. And then service dominant logic and design thinking and complexity thinking. And service dominant logic and design thinking and complexity thinking are items that are covered in quite a lot of detail in the service design practice. So once again, here are all of the practices that are discussed, not in a whole lot of detail, but in enough detail for how it supports high velocity IT. And it's kind of the ones that you would expect to see in here. Information security, risk, availability, monitoring, problem, continuity. And then I mentioned service design. So service design has a lot of discussion in there about things like design thinking. And then service validation and testing. And how does that fit into something like a CI/CD environment? And then our technical management practices, deployment, infrastructure, and software development. So that is our HVIT. The next module is Drive Stakeholder Value. And Drive Stakeholder Value is focusing in mostly on engage in terms of the service value chain. So demand is our trigger. So we need to take a look at what is the demand for services and different aspects of services. Engage any conversation with our users, with our customers, and then producing something of value. So it's the whole idea of driving that stakeholder value. I'm going to talk about something called the customer journey, and on the next page we'll kind of highlight the customer journey and what kind of depth you're going to go on into on that one. It's also looking at things like target markets and stakeholders, how we foster stakeholder relationships, how do we shape demand and define our service offerings, how do we align our expectations and agree on the details of services, and then things like how do we bring our customers on to the service, how do we bring the users on, and then how do we co-create value. So that's all done through something called the Stakeholder Journey. So you can see that there's a number of steps in here: explore, engage, offer, agree, onboard, co-create, and realize. You have a red line in the center, and what that red line is indicating is things along the way of the customer journey of touch points and moments of truth. So you discuss what is a touch point and what is a moment of truth, and how is that important to both the service provider and to the customer and to the user. So going across the top, explore at a high level is where the service provider and the customer independently explore what are the options out there. So you talk about in detail, what does that mean? Engage is where the service provider and the customer basically discover each other. Maybe this is where they start some discussions. Offer is basically that two-way conversation where the customer is giving their requirements to the service provider, and a service provider is doing things to shape demand and determine what are they going to offer. And then agree is that negotiate and agreement phase. There might be some contracts developed here or some service level agreements and those types of items for the two parties to agree that they're going to have a relationship and to move on to the next step, which is onboard. And onboard is where you bring on your day-to-day users. So the point so far has only been discussions between the service provider and the customer. And the customer is the one who defines the requirements and determines what the specific outcome is going to be. Then co-create. So you've brought all of your users and all of your customers on board, and they're now using the service. So what we discuss in then this section is how do we deliver and actually use the services in order to co-create value, because that's what the goal is. Then realize is where we track performance. This is where we are measuring, so you're going to see there'll be some measurements again, where we are tracking experience and satisfaction of the users and customers. Some other interesting things in that diagram that you discuss is the idea of the line of visibility and the band of visibility. And this idea of visibility is the service provider doesn't see everything that the customer does, and the customer doesn't see everything that the service provider does. So that's where we get into some of those discussions on what does that mean relative to the stakeholder journey. So there's a lot of really interesting things that are in there. And then once again, there's a series of practices that are discussed. Portfolio management deciding what services are going to be offered to the customers and what are some of the options in there. Relationship management, building on that engage block where we're gathering information from our customers and from our users about what do they want and basically how they're feeling about some of their services. Supplier management. We need suppliers in order to help us to deliver our services. Then business analysis, kind of going hand in hand with that engage aspect, where we're getting information from our customers. Then the service catalog, that list of our live services that may be published somewhere, and that might be the very first step in that customer journey where we've got our customers and our users out there looking for possible solutions. So in the explore phase, our users or our customers may have discovered a catalog and say, well, this service provider offers us what we need. So kind of the back and forth in there on the explore and engage in terms of what services will a service provider offer. Then service level management, that negotiating and agreeing what levels of services will actually be delivered. Service request management, when you get into the onboard aspect and how service request management then dovetails into there. As you go through these, and you see each of the individual managing professional modules, and then adding DITS into there, the digital and IT strategy, you'll see that every practice is touched upon in all of the courses. So that entire chart, if you overlaid it on each other, every practice is touched eventually by something. So those are the 4 managing professional modules. So now let's take a look at the strategic leader modules. So strategic leader is made up of two modules: direct, plan, and improve, which is the one that we already discussed. It's the common module to managing professional and strategic leader. Kind of a side note on direct, plan, and improve. One of the commonly asked questions is, which module is most like something in ITIL version 3? And the ITIL 4 modules are very different in terms of how they're put together versus version 3. Direct, plan, and improve is the one module that kind of feels like some of the version 3, or is a closer match. And it's a closer match to the version 3 continual service improvement, or CSI, because it is talking about that continual improvement approach. It also brings in a lot of detail that was previously included in the ITIL version 3 practitioner relative to organizational change management and to metrics. The other course that is in the ITIL strategic leader title is digital and IT strategy. And this is course number 1285. It is 3 days in length. It is instructor-led, it's classroom format, and it has extended hours. Typically, your 3-day courses end in the vicinity of 4:30. This particular class goes till 5, and it literally does go right to 5. I typically finish this one up about 5 of 5 with, finish off any last-minute questions, and students log off somewhere between 5 and 5:15. The exam is done outside of class. This is a jam-packed 3 days. In order to get the certificate Digital and IT Strategy, and then to be eligible for the title ITIL Strategic Leader, it requires 2 things. One is a graded, in-class, small group case analysis. Okay, I know that sounds scary. It really isn't. It is 4 activities. They are done as a group. It is a group score, and your instructor guides you along the way. It is actually graded by the instructor outside of class, but you have your classmates that all participate and help each other. It has been very, very well received. I've taught this one 3 or 4 times so far, and a couple of other instructors have also done it. The case study itself is very relevant to the world today. The case study is actually, you have a choice of 3 different companies. You choose which company you want to apply to the generic risk factors, etc. And it does very much look like the world in the last year. The second piece, in order to get the certification of DITS, is there's a certification exam. It's 1 hour. It's 30 questions, and it's Bloom's level 1, 2, and 3. So again, it's a basic, straightforward type of exam. So you use the case study. So I mentioned this case study. It's 1 page per company. There is the world situation that you're being presented with, and then there's a risk page. There's a list of risks. So it's 3 to 5 pages. So it's not like it's a 20-page case study. And you use this case study to create a digital strategy. So the things that you talk about in there is things like, what is digital? What does IT mean? What's operational technology? What's a digital organization? And a digital organization is an organization that's enabled by digital to do business significantly differently, or significantly different business. So we really talk about that, the fact that the digital aspect is a fundamental component of the organization. And you then basically take these concepts and you develop a digital strategy for your chosen company. You're going to use the continual improvement approach as you go about developing the strategy and implementing the strategy. So we literally walk through the continual improvement approach as we develop it. We use the 7 guiding principles. So ITIL 4 Foundation, goes through your principles of focus on value. Focus on value is making sure that everything you do has value to somebody, either the customer or the service provider. Start where you are. The concept of examine what you already have and determine if you can use what you've already got. The idea of using go to the Gemba or observing directly, and then using metrics to support. Keep it simple and practical, examining the shortest route to get to something, using the minimal number of steps. Think and work holistically, recognize how everything is connected together. Collaborate and promote visibility, the idea of transparency and thought, work, and action, and how it builds a better solution and gets better buy-in. Then progress iteratively with feedback, doing work in smaller chunks, doing it faster, the idea of identifying mistakes or failures earlier or fail fast. And then optimize and automate, simplifying things and then using automation to make you more efficient. Once you develop your strategy, then we go into what are the key capabilities that we need in order to ensure that we are going to be successful in delivering this digital and IT strategy. And you'll recognize accept ambiguity and uncertainty, and trust and be trusted, continually raise the bar, help get the customer's job done, and commit to continual learning as some aspects that were discussed in HVIT. The other thing that we then move into is the idea of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. And how do all of these then affect our digital and IT strategy? Some of the concepts from HVIT are carried over into digital and IT strategy and actually applied to this case study. So in your course of using the continual improvement model and using these capabilities, you're going to do things like discuss how does business and IT leaders across the globe respond to digital disruption. And if you take a look at what's happened in the last year, there's been a lot of digital disruption. So it's very, very relevant, or a very relevant topic. And how does this digital disruption shape your corporate strategy? We have to take a look at, as this digital disruption happens, what's happened in the marketplace, and then what happens to happen to information technology. We discuss how different organizations remain viable in an environment that's being disrupted. So there's a lot of discussion on disruption. We then look at some of the risks and the opportunities that are given to us by digital and IT strategy, and then some techniques that we might use and how we might go about implementing some of these. So it's an exciting course. It is a very, very packed 3 days. When you sign up for this course, you will see that there is a little bit of pre-read. And the pre-read for this one is to review ITIL 4 Foundations. We do not have time to do things like review ITIL 4 Foundations in this course. And the other pre-read is to make sure that you're up to date on the guiding principles, and then to read the 5-page case. We ask that you come in having read the 5-page case with an idea of which case study do you want to participate in. And every time that we've taught this course so far, everybody's been able to get the case study that they want to discuss. And once again, that exam is done outside of class. And on the third day, we do go to right around 4 o'clock. There is one activity done on morning in the first day. There are 2 activities done on the second day. And then there is the final activity is done in the morning of the third day. So a different structure than you've been used to on the other managing professional modules. Then to wrap up DITS, the general management practices of architecture management. And for people in IT, I think we tend to think of architecture as being very, very technical. Architecture is bigger than that. Talks about continual improvement, knowledge, measurement and reporting, portfolio, a little bit on organizational change management, and then project management and how that connects in, relationship, risk, financial management, strategy, and then workforce and talent management. Just like in all of the other managing professional modules, the DITS module also just touches upon these more from a what is the purpose and what are the practice success factors that are necessary. So that wraps up DITS. So this, once again, is that ITIL 4 qualification structure. What I have not yet mentioned is that version 3 expert transition course. So the managing professional modules, 4 of them, 3 days each. If you have 17 version 3 credits, you can take course 1194, referred to as MPT, Managing Professional Transition. And that particular module covers the differences in Create, Deliver, Support, DSV, HVIT, and DPI from version 3. So it's a 5-day course. It's one exam. It's 40 questions, ABCD standard format. It's longer. It's 90 minutes. But it's still 40 questions, and you then earn the title of Managing Professional. If you have that title, Managing Professional, if you then take Digital and IT Strategy, 1285, you then earn ITIL Strategic Leader. So the MPT, Managing Professional Transition course, gives you a pass on having to do Direct Plan and Improve for ITIL Strategic Leader. I think that kind of brings me up to the end here. As always, you can contact Learning Tree, your sales partner, with any particular questions. And I think we've got a couple of end polls that I would appreciate if you would answer in there. And I'm looking to see if there's any particular questions that you have in there that I can answer at this time. I would look forward to seeing any of you in class, and if you do, any of you are in any of my classes, please give a holler and let me know that you did attend this webinar. So I will go over to Jackie to review any of those questions. I do see the question in there, or the comment, graduate school all over again. Yes, indeed, it does kind of feel like that.
Yeah, Sandy, while we're waiting for any questions to come in the chat pod, can you tell us, of the 7 guiding principles, are there any that you feel are more important than the others, or require more focus, or do you pretty much treat them evenly?
So what we talk about in foundations, and it's reinforced in DITS, and I did see a comment in there that says, what is DITS? It's Digital and IT Strategy. It's that nickname for, I'm gonna go back just a bit here. There, it's that nickname for Digital and IT Strategy. And by the way, it's Axelos that named all of these. These are not our titles. But in both DITS and in Foundation, we talk about the 7 guiding principles as 7 universal principles that we should always consider in each individual circumstance. Depending on the circumstance, one might be more relevant than another, but we should at least look at them and then decide, is it relevant right now? So good question in there. I can see the question in there. I'm going to get ahead of Jackie. What is ITIL Master? Is that a separate course or gain? So version 3 ITIL Master is what I can talk to, because ITIL 4 Master has not yet been released. So the version 3 Master was, you need to have the top title. So in this case, it would be, you would need to have Managing Professional and ITIL Strategic Leader. In version 3, what you did was to prepare, I'm going to call it a white paper, but you prepared a presentation, you prepare a paper on either something that you have done, something you've implemented, or in some concepts related to the ITIL overall. And you submit that to Axelos, and it goes to, I'm going to call it the master board, so that's Sandy Kelly's term in there, and it's reviewed on its merits, and then you basically do a presentation, and I use the phrase, you defend it, as I'm looking at this from the perspective of a master's or a PhD, where you defend your dissertation. So it's not called a dissertation, but that's essentially what you did in version 3. So ITIL 4 master has not been outlined. There is a certain amount of expectation that it will be similar to that. I would start off with getting the managing professional title and the strategic leader title. A couple of last minute notes on there, because I don't see all of the comments. I see some of them. Why was MPT not in the choice list there? MPT is good until next, I'm going to say June. It's not clear if it's June 31st or July 1 when it's going, when Axelos will no longer be offering it. So for version 3, if you have 12 version 3 credits, you may want to get the last 3 credits in the intermediate scheme in order to jump to MPT. What I did not outline in here is that version 3 exams will no longer be offered by Axelos 12/31 of 2021. So you've essentially got August, September, October, November, 5 months left to finish off version 3. And then the MPT exam will be available until next summer. So that's kind of important to know there.
Sandy, one of the questions here is, are sample DITS exams or sample exams or questions still extremely rare to find?
So all of these modules, the managing professional and the strategic leader, Axelos publishes 2 sample exams. That's all they publish, is 2 of them. Anything else that you find out on the web is somebody's, one of 2 things. It's either somebody who took the exam and is remembering, in quotes, what they read and what the choices were, or it's somebody else's examples. So in our course, in each one of these, at the end of every chapter, we have 3 chapter questions that we made up. You know, we took the syllabus, we said this is something that they could ask, and we try and keep it in the level of difficulty of the exam. So we basically have additional questions at the end of our chapters, but we always are very, very clear that we made those up. So sometimes there's a little bit of discussion on, well, I read it this way, and so we try and talk about how might we interpret some of these things. But they are rare, only because Axelos officially only publishes 2 sample papers.
And Sandy, someone here, Gabrielle, would like you to reiterate, if they complete the Managing Professional Transition course, can you recap what you outlined for the free pass?
Yes, so when I say the free pass is, what I mean by that is you don't have to take Direct Plan and Improve. You still must do the digital and IT strategy. So if you do the Managing Professional Transition, you are deemed to have qualified Direct Plan and Improve. So then essentially, if you have the version 3 credits, you can take MPT, course number 1194, and Digital and IT Strategy 1285, and you now have both titles, Managing Professional and Strategic Leader. So if you've got those,
so it's basically
those credits.
2 exams.
I'm
right,
sorry?
Sandy, it's basically 2 exams, your
Correct.
Managing Professional exam and your DITS exam.
Exactly.
As opposed
to 5 courses, 15 days, and 5 exams. And MPT does a really good job of getting into each one of those and what you need to know. One question people typically ask me regarding strategic leader is there an order? There is not an order. I am finding that the majority of people in the DITS class are doing DPI first. Now that may be because DPI was available earlier than the Digital and IT Strategy course. It's not a bad order. It's not required, but I am finding more and more students are doing that. And you do not have to have passed DPI to do DITS. You just need to pass it in order to have the title.
Sandy, I know you get this question a lot when people are comparing ITIL 3 to ITIL 4. And, you know, I know I've reached out to you that question that customers have a lot. Can you just kind of, for those who on the webinar who either have ITIL 3 Foundation or may have gone up, you know, through some of the intermediate modules, what would you say is the main difference between ITIL 3 and ITIL 4?
Okay, ITIL 3, in Sandy Kelly's opinion, was more focused on, obviously on the life cycle for those who did version 3. And each of the ITIL version 3 courses and certifications focused in on the processes. And every single one of those courses you spent, if it was a 3-day course, you spent, you know, a day and a half to 2 days talking about processes, inputs, outputs, steps. You talked about the life cycle, but from a very siloed point of view. ITIL 4 has thrown out that silo, and I am going to, ITIL 4 it goes into the service value chain instead, which is much more iterative. Version 3 did not mean to be linear, but way too many organizations looked at it from a linear format. So the service value chain is more building blocks and gives you more of the impression of, oh, I can be very, very iterative in this. So in removing the process focus in there, there's certainly all of the practices, but none of these courses go into the level of detail that the version 3 processes did. So the course itself focuses in on a bigger picture of how do we create, deliver, and support, or how do we actually direct, plan, and improve, but does not go into the level of detail on the practices that version 3 did. The level of detail is in the My Axelos subscription, so it's now a living document. So at this point in time, there are no certifications on incident management, for example, like you had in version 3. That's the big difference. I'll kind of I'll half-ask the next question, which is how might these map? Direct, plan, and improve is the closest match to version 3's CSI. Create, deliver, and support is the closest match to all 3 service design, service transition, and service operations. Drive stakeholder value is closer to strategy and design, but they really and truly don't map. It's kind of the big difference there.
And there is a question relating to that in the chat pod. Which modules closely covers the change management enablement role?
Change management would be most discussed, quite honestly, in Foundation. And create, deliver, and support will probably touch on it the most of those 4. And then I would look in the ITIL 4 practices documentation. Now I keep referencing this My ITIL subscription. Every time you take an exam, you get access to the My ITIL subscription for free. And that's from Axelos and from PeopleCert. That is not from Learning Tree. It says once you take the exam, you get access, or you can subscribe on your own, and it's in the vicinity of $80 a year. And I'm saying in the vicinity because I don't know the exact price, and sometimes it's in pounds, sometimes it's in Canadian dollars, and they can always change it. So that's where you're going to find the most detail on that today.
Kenneth is asking, does ITIL Foundation have any prereqs? I have no other certs and only have an undergrad IT degree.
No prerequisites, and everything that you need to know in order to pass that ITIL Foundation exam, you will either hear it said, you will read it on a page, read it on a slide in the course, or it will be covered in a workbook / practice exam in our ITIL 4 Foundation course. We very much pride ourselves on everything you need is in that course. So that's everything you need is in every course, but foundations, that's all you need. You need to attend class and do the homework. That's pretty helpful.
It looks like we've got a couple of, I may say that Sandy has a very high exam pass rate. In case you're looking
I
to
always
have
maintain that if you do all of the activities and you spend, everybody's different, right? Some people need 10 minutes of review time. Some people need 90 minutes of review time. But if you actually review your notes, do the activities, look at what you missed in ITIL 4 Foundation activities and go back and do them again, you're going to be just fine.
And the 1 hour of coaching is always available too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's always, if you need additional prep for the exam, that comes along with your course. So, and it looks like we
Foundations
are.
is fun too. It's a fun course.
Okay, great. I think we're coming to the end, and the questions are slowing down, Sandy. So, and thank you, Gavin, for the plug for Foundation. Anyway, this was extremely informative, Sandy, and we want to thank you. Oh, there is another question. Can I go from Intermediate Service Transition Management to ITIL 4 to 1285?
Okay, so intermediate service transition. So you're talking about the if you're referring to version 3 service transition certification, nothing can stop you, or nothing does stop you from attending the course, but you cannot take the exam unless you have ITIL 4 Foundation. And I will also tell you that you really need Foundation to do digital and IT strategy because of the emphasis on ITIL 4 guiding principles. So you really do need that, you really do need Foundation. You need ITIL 4 Foundation, not version 3.
It looks like you've answered her question. So, Sandy, we're coming up to the end here. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Sandy, do you have any closing comments before we close out?
Look forward to seeing some of you in class. If you've answered that poll, that's very helpful. It helps us in our planning. And keep an eye on our website for recordings of this, other webinars, and other future items. And thank you for attending.